I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. David Eddy. David is an associate director at the Recovery Research Institute and Center for Digital Mental Health. He's a clinical psychologist at Massachusetts General Hospital and an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School. He's also a Phoenix research partner, which means he works closely with us and our research team. And his work focuses on understanding the psychological and psychophysiological factors behind substance use disorders with the goal of developing new treatments. So David, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here and share these findings with you. So just by way of introduction, thanks, Katie, for that intro. I just have a few disclosures. I just want to let you all know up front that this work was funded by the National Institute of Drug Abuse. And I do have some scientific advisory roles with several companies, and the information or the data I present here today is really is my perspective, and I don't necessarily represent I'm not necessarily speaking for Mass General or the other institutions I'm affiliated with. So Phoenix has been around for a while at this point, and there's a general sense in the recovery community that it works well. This is something that's out there, it's growing rapidly, and it's helping people. But actually, there's been very little research, and that's not to minimize the work that the Phoenix has done to self-study, which has been phenomenal. Most organizations don't self-study as rigorously as the Phoenix does. But in terms of it being a sort of unique, in many ways, intervention, like compared to what we know about AA or cognitive behavioral therapy, we know very little about the Phoenix. And we sought to plug some of those gaps with this NIDA-funded grant, which involved a qualitative study, which I'll be talking about today, but also a longitudinal quantitative study in which we followed Phoenix participants in a control group for 6 months and assessed them at 4 times over that period to see how they were doing, how they were responding to the Phoenix, were they improving psychosocially, what were substance use outcomes for these folks, were they doing better, feeling better, and so on. Now, that work, we finished recruiting for that aspect of the study, but we are still in the data analysis. So we don't have any results yet to share, but I do have some results today from the first part of the study, the qualitative study. So in this study, we took Phoenix members and instructors from the Boston location, and we invited them to participate in 1-hour focus meetings. We compensated folks $20 for their participation. And importantly, we let them know that the information they shared with us was going to remain confidential. We wanted folks to share candidly their thoughts and feelings about the Phoenix, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And so we wanted them to know that we were providing a safe place for them to share, and we wouldn't share any information that they shared directly with us with the Phoenix, outside of publications, of course, that will arise out of this work. So we did 5 focus meetings, 3 with Phoenix members and 2 with Phoenix instructors. These were pretty small. They were intimate discussions, which I think actually really benefited the conversation. We asked folks, both members and instructors, 4 questions in each focus meeting, same 4 questions. We asked them, what initially attracted you about the Phoenix model? How would you describe the Phoenix and the people who attend it? How do you think the Phoenix supports your recovery from addiction and/or other psychological problems? And finally, are there any aspects of the Phoenix model that you would change if you could? So we recorded these meetings, we transcribed what was said, and then with a collaborator and I, Dr. John Kelly, we went through, we read the transcripts, and we identified themes. So if somebody was talking about, feeling at ease and comfort when they're at Phoenix events, that may have been coded as sort of warmth and safety, for instance. And we came up with these different themes. And then with several other collaborators, we read through the transcripts, and each statement, essentially each sentence or maybe cluster of sentences was then thematically coded in special software. So we could actually map in a way like how commonly or how frequently these themes were being discussed. And that's really the results I'm going to be sharing with you today. Um, so we had some checks in place so that once we did the coding, we had them recoded and we checked for consistency. And then ultimately we rank ordered the results that we found. So just before I jump into the results, just to give you a sense of who our sample was in these focus meetings, the average age was around 45. We had an even split of people who identify as men and women, predominantly white European American sample, mix of sexual orientations. And in primary substance, for most folks, it was alcohol, but we did have a mix of folks who endorsed other substances, cocaine or opioids. And I thought this was kind of interesting, compared to other mutual help programs that have a sort of a strong allegiance to an abstinence-based model of recovery, such as AA or NA, we did see a bit more of a mix of substance use goals. Which really tracks with the openness and inclusiveness of the Phoenix. We expected to see a little more diversity in terms of what people were reporting in terms of their substance use goals. And in terms of how long people have been in recovery or been in remission, most folks were well into sustained remission, which tracks for something like this. Often the folks you get presenting to participate in focus meetings like this are often a little further down the track in their recovery. And on average, folks have been affiliated with the Phoenix for 22 months. But you can see in parentheses that's a standard deviation. It's very large, indicating that there was a lot of variability in that. So that for sure, there were some people who'd been affiliated with the Phoenix for years and years and years. But there were some who were quite new. Some of the members that we interviewed had only really just initiated participation in the Phoenix program. So to our first question, what initially attracted you about the Phoenix model? Really overwhelmingly, members were telling us it's a sense of community connection and shared experience that they found there. And also they talked about common purpose as well, which is something we see consistently in mutual help programs, including like AA and NA and Smart Recovery, is there's a sense of community around the common purpose, people coming together who may usually not interact or meet out there in the world, who are all really on this journey together and have that commonality, which ties and bonds individuals together. So there was also this emphasis on positivity and increasing positive affect. And this is a theme you'll see over and over again. It really, we saw in response to all of our questions. And this is really something I think is interesting. And I think this is an important distinguishing feature of the Phoenix. There is a strong emphasis on positivity. It's really a strengths-based program versus a deficits-based, which other mutual help programs are usually based on. And I don't say that as a slight. There is some value in looking at our deficits. If we want to achieve addiction recovery, it is helpful to look at our deficits. But too often, I think treatment historically and perhaps other mutual help programs have overemphasized deficits. Well, maybe not they've underemphasized positives. And because everybody has strengths, people have inherent strengths, and no matter how broken people are when they come in to addiction recovery and in their early recovery, they still have strengths that can be elicited and pulled upon. And I think the Phoenix does a really nice job of eliciting strengths and maintaining a positive framework of recovery. And that really came through in our participants' discussions about the Phoenix. But also a lot of folks noted it's a safe and healthy environment. Like this came up over and over again. Folks felt safe in the Phoenix. They didn't feel judged. They felt like they could go to Phoenix programming and, perform at the level they were capable of performing, knowing that there would be a wide range, people, especially exercise-based programming. Some folks were just further along, some people were more physically fit, but they didn't feel judged. And they felt no matter where they were at, that they could be a part of and participate and feel valued in that. And we saw really the same thing from the instructors, which is perhaps not so surprising. But one thing they noted more frequently than the members was that it's a free gym. It's a great resource to the community. Like it makes sense people would be seeking this out. Like where else do you find such like high quality facilities and free classes, high quality classes at no cost? And they said they really felt like that was something that was attractive to them when they first started coming around the Phoenix, and also they felt like that's one of the reasons some people keep coming. But they also noted sense of connection and community was really, really important, and that sense of common purpose. So then we asked folks, well, like, how would you describe the Phoenix and the people who attend it? And it's very subjective, right? I mean, this is we just want to know, like, what do you think? I mean, like, how do you find the people that you're in, you find yourself in activities with, in classes with? And again, a lot of the same themes came up. Again, people they're saying things a little bit differently, of course, different question, but the same kind of themes were being activated. There's, sense of community and connection. There's a camaraderie. That word came up multiple times where people felt sort of a real connection to the people they were participating with. Again, emphasis on positivity, but also a lot of folks, or several folks at least, noted positive role modeling. And this is something we see in other mutual help programs where seeing people further along in their recovery journey can be incredibly empowering and instill hope. The instructors, they most frequently noted the safe, healthy environment and the warm, welcoming environment. But again, emphasis on positivity. And to a lesser degree, they suggested perhaps, there's healthy coping mechanisms in play and, people are getting what they need when they come to the Phoenix. So then we asked, how do you think the Phoenix supports your recovery from addiction and or other psychological problems? This is something we're really interested in assessing in the second phase, the quantitative phase of this study. We really want to know not only are people receiving benefit from participating in the Phoenix, are they having better outcomes on all kinds of different levels, but if they are, how are they benefiting? What are the mechanisms of action potentially? Like, how are they getting there? What is the secret sauce? What are the active ingredients of the Phoenix that are perhaps, most beneficial? And perhaps as well, like, what are the aspects of maybe that are less impactful? That's really important to know as well. And that's stuff we want to know about any kind of treatment or intervention for substance use disorder or any other condition. So again, folks highlighted the sense of community and connection. They thought that was really powerful and impactful. But also, a lot of the members noted structure and routine was really important for them, like having somewhere to go, somewhere to be, having something in their book each week. And I think this is true, of a lot of things. Like if we've got an appointment or something scheduled, like we're much more likely to show up. We're more likely to go to the gym if we've got an appointment with a personal trainer than we are if we just have to get ourselves to the gym to work out alone. And so the structure and routine seem to be beneficial, or at least perceived to be beneficial for a lot of participants. But also people really like the range of activities. And they talked about like they loved that there was some activities that were really exercise based, but others that challenged them or even scared them a little bit, or pushed them out of their comfort zone, like rock climbing or other activities that might be new to them that are perhaps get the adrenaline running a little bit. But again, emphasis on positivity, but also exposure to a variety of recovery experiences. One thing I heard over and over again was that folks really appreciated the fact that in the Phoenix, like there were multiple recovery pathways represented. Some folks were coming from traditional treatment. Some had, pursued or continue to be engaged with other mutual help programs. There's like a wide range of pathways represented, and that created I got the sense they felt there was a sense of inclusivity with that no matter what pathway you'd pursued, like everybody's here. We're all here together to work out or participate in whatever activity we're participating in, and that it doesn't really matter. Like everybody's got their journey, and there's no judgment. There's no sort of right or wrong. Now, the instructors, they thought that building psychological resilience was important, and also that it was a healthy coping mechanism. Again, emphasis on positivity, but also building meaning and purpose. They thought that that was an important aspect of the Phoenix that was potentially conferring a lot of benefit for participants. So then we got to us like, well, all right, that's all good. We heard a lot of positive things. Like, are there any aspects of the Phoenix that you would change? Either things perhaps you don't like as much, or you just think the Phoenix could do better? And folks just didn't have as much to add here. Obviously, this is a fairly obviously a pro Phoenix sample we got. Focus meetings like this are inherently self-selecting. But we felt we created a safe space, and I think people felt comfortable being candid with us. And the one thing that really, really came up for members was that they felt the Phoenix needed to do a better job communicating the inclusive nature of the Phoenix and communicating that to the wider community. And I think that part for instructors as well. A couple of folks noted adding more group activities could be beneficial, maybe adding team sports. And I think my subsequent conversations with Jackie and some of the other team there, I've learned that that's all stuff that's on the cards and happening. So it sounds like the Phoenix is already out in front of those comments or concerns. So just to conclude, like the attractors here are sort of our takeaway. It's clear that if people are finding a sense of community and social connection in the Phoenix, it's a warm and positive social climate for folks. They like going there. They feel welcome. They don't feel judged. They feel like they're being met where they're at. There's a lot of positive role modeling going on, which we know is really, really important in addiction recovery. It's really true. Sort of addiction is a disorder of isolation, and people recover best in communities and having role models and having people they can lean on and peers they can go to support. And I think the Phoenix appears to be at providing that. But also, I think physical and recreational activities that can enhance positive self-image are an important part of what the Phoenix offers. You don't I don't say you don't get that in traditional mutual help programs. I think maybe you get that through paying it forward and doing acts of service and being, a member of a group and helping the next person achieve recovery. But I think there's something unique about the Phoenix and the physicality and of the activities, and that's I think probably also confers some physiological benefits, which is something we're really interested in looking at in phase 2 as well. Is like how much does exercise directly impact outcomes, because that is a key difference between the Phoenix and traditional mutual health programs. So in terms of perceived benefits, our take homes, there's clearly positive social identification occurring and connection among participants, but it seems to be providing structure and routine. And we know that makes sense. I mean, structure and routine is important in early recovery. Often in early recovery, we're coming out of, a chaotic period in our lives, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of problems. We feel like we're putting out spot fires. Maybe we're out of work, we are experiencing housing instability. So having some consistency, I think, is really important. And building psychological resilience, of course, that's a central to addiction recovery. But I think there's also this, we heard about catharsis through physical activity. And importantly, I didn't talk about this as much, but we also heard about destigmatization and how people really felt the Phoenix destigmatized addiction and recovery. So thanks to the research coordinators who did a lot of the heavy lifting in this study, and our collaborators. Thank you to the Phoenix, who are your great collaborators in this work, and of course the National Institute of Drug Abuse for funding this. So I'll leave it there, and I think we were going to do some Q&A. I'm probably a bit over.
Yeah, thanks, David. That was excellent. I will kick it off our question and answer portion of the session by handing it over to Jackie. So Jackie, you ready?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I know most of you probably know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm Jackie Helios, Deputy Executive Director and co-founder at the Phoenix and New Form. My pronouns are she, her. and from the beginning, the Phoenix has really been committed to ensuring that what we do is based in evidence. We developed a theory of change very early on, and we've set out to really prove that and apply learning as we go to modify it and evolve the kind of work that we do. And we're tremendously grateful, David, to you and the team for kind of jumping into this work with us to help us prove the efficacy of the Phoenix model, and also build the knowledge that's so critical for us to evolve what it is that we're doing. And so it's great to be here with you. That was a great presentation. It's always lovely to have folks who can speak on behalf of the Phoenix, and it just comes pouring out in such a beautiful way. And so I'm tremendously grateful for that. Beth is manning the Q&A, so if people do have questions, she's going to ping me or she's going to jump in, and we'll be able to get some of those questions answered as well. But David, I just want to start and kind of kick things off with a couple questions that I have.
Yeah.
And this one's maybe a little less research focused, but now that you have kind of been working with us for a while, and you have a deeper understanding of what the Phoenix is, and you've heard and kind of seen the outcomes from this qualitative research, if someone new to recovery came up to you and they hadn't heard about the Phoenix yet, what would you tell them?
It's easy because I do this all the time in my clinical practice. I'm always sending folks to the Phoenix. And that's because it really offers an alternative pathway that I think is inherently valuable. Like now, sometimes I'm sending folks to Phoenix because they're clearly, they're not feeling or finding that other mutual help programs are a good fit for them. They check them out. It's just like, it's just not my thing. It's like, great, here's something that's very different. And I know that they can go to the Phoenix, and more work needs to be done. We need more data to really understand, how the Phoenix is working. But it is clearly, just from a clinical perspective, I mean, clearly people are benefiting from it. I mean, people wouldn't keep going if they weren't, and it's growing. So, we have a pretty good sense that it works. And so, I want people, in my practice to, reap the benefits of mutual help programs. I'm somewhat agnostic about which mutual help program they go to, as long as it feels like a fit for them and they can benefit, then great. So I'm suggesting the Phoenix for folks who maybe don't feel like the other mutual help programs are a good fit. If we're talking about mutual help, if they just want to do CBT, then we're just doing CBT. But I think that even for folks who are finding do find other mutual help programs a good fit and are doing well, there's still benefit there. I'm like, look, you want to exercise more? I've got the perfect place for you. Like, it's a win-win. It's a 2-for-1. You could, you work out, and you might meet some people, who are on a similar journey, and get some peer support, while you're getting your exercise in for the way. I mean, it's like, it's a win-win.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. I think we're excited to be a pathway for all people, and it seems like you're finding some of that in your research as well. And it's nice to hear that when you're talking with your clients that that you're sharing about the Phoenix too. When we were talking just a little while ago, you mentioned that people talked about feeling safe and not judged. And I know you and I have had some conversations about this idea of psychological safety, and our team has paid a lot of attention to it and done some research on it. I'm curious, reflecting on maybe the other work that you've done with other recovery organizations, or kind of your exposure to these other organizations more broadly, do you see that sort of kind of cultural component in their work as well? Or do you think of this as maybe a new kind of lane through which we need to be looking at recovery and recovery support?
Yeah, it's incredibly important. It's not like, it's not everything, but it's an important beginning, right? Because if you don't have a basis of psychological safety in a program, like, you're probably not going to hang around, right? Or you're not going to engage in the same way. You're not going to benefit in the same way. So I think it's an absolutely a necessary beginning. But I with my with John Kelly at the Recovery Research Institute, who is a co-director of this study, we've been for a long time thinking about the Phoenix and its possible mechanisms of action, and we think that's very important. We're pretty sure like the sense of community people find there is going to play out as sort of an important mediating factor in terms of the benefits conferred, and but we also think that the exercise that people get to do, the physicality, is probably conferring benefit as well. And importantly, and this is true for all mutual help programs, like no two people are really the same in terms of how they benefit. Like all mutual help programs offer multiple benefits, and people tend to benefit in different ways. For some people, it's having that peer support and the installation of hope, of role model makes all the difference. For some people, it's probably having a safe place to go in a really chaotic and scary world that's going to make all the difference. And, for everybody, there's probably a constellation of factors that's really going to be important for them. And that's the great thing about mutual help programs like the Phoenix. It's like you offer like so many benefits. Some we probably haven't even identified yet.
Yeah. Well, I know that we've talked a bit. I do see some hands raised, so I want to open the
Yeah.
door to that. I'm not sure who went up first. I see Andy and Chris, and there may be others. Maybe one of you guys want to just jump in.
I'm gonna jump in because I know
Okay.
Nayang wanted to ask a question. So I've got you
Okay.
on order. I'm gonna come to you, Nayang, and then Andy and Chris.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, David. Thanks so much for sharing this important work. One question I have, it's actually related to something that I experienced this past weekend, or I learned about a friend of mine. So his partner became addicted to meth, and he's Korean. He's an immigrant that came to the US when he was 21. I think he's like in his 30s now.
Mm.
So he's very much like culturally, he's very much Korean.
Mm.
And you may know that like in a lot of Asian cultures, it's like mental health is even more stigmatized than in the US. So and so he doesn't even like, reach out for professional help because of that. He doesn't see a therapist. He doesn't see, So the only support he has is his husband, who also is a recovering meth addict.
Mm.
So I'm wondering like whether like the Phoenix model takes into account, different differences in cultures, or does it even matter?
Yeah, and that's probably a better question for Jackie.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that.
Yeah.
We work really hard to create a safe and supportive, welcoming environment for all people, and have intentionally chosen not to step into being like a clinical setting for much the same reason as what you're describing, that a lot of folks don't necessarily want to, or culturally don't feel like that's the right fit for them. And so this idea that you can come in and start out by playing basketball or going for a hike, those sorts of really natural sort of activities paves the way for people to really develop genuine friendships. And it's through those friendships and that environment that's psychologically safe that it makes space for people to kind of really get the benefit of being in a supportive relationship. And with the diversity of things that we offer, we hope that we're able to meet people where they're at. And we're also really looking to grow and expand our volunteer pool so that we can diversify even more. And so if there's something that, maybe they don't see something that is appealing to them, a volunteer doesn't see something that is appealing to them, they can just start it. So, if somebody wants to start a pickleball or they want to do a history tour, like there's all kinds of things that can be done, and it really comes down to what resonates. And so the idea is that hopefully, as we continue to grow and expand, that there really is something for everyone. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think the main thing that was the most important to him was that it's anonymous, like that they know it's anonymous and that it's clear that nobody, like
Yeah.
nobody will really know who he is, and he can just participate without having having his identity,
Yeah.
being out there.
I think the thing with the Phoenix is that it's as anonymous as you want it to be.
Mm.
And so for some, they may choose to come to one of our brick and mortar facilities where they know the environment is very much contained, and you're really going to be around other people who are like yourself. And for others, they may venture out into the community, because some of our community events happen in local CrossFit gym or a climbing gym or on a trail. And so I think, again, having that opportunity to test out the environment that feels safest for you. In those settings, we can't ensure absolute anonymity, because you're going to be around other people who might have a Phoenix t-shirt on, but you'll be there with a group of people who have your back and who are there to support you. And you yourself can choose to what degree you want to kind of be out and open.
Thank you.
I know we're at time, so I appreciate everyone staying on a little bit longer. We've got 2 more questions in the audience. So Andy, I'm going to come to you next, and then Chris afterwards.
Sure. Hi, Andy Shorty. I'm a senior regional manager with the Phoenix. Sorry for being off camera. I'm going to visit my colleague in Dallas, but I had 2 questions. I know we don't have time, so dealer's choice. One is, I just wanted to dig into the opportunities and kind of areas for growth. And I'm curious if you saw kind of differential results based on event modality or location or kind of any other kind of programming type or variable. And then second one is, I think, to Jackie's point and credit, like our non-clinical status is really what helps us scale and be successful, but also I think presents, it's can be an uphill battle in the recovery space to gain validation and kind of mind share if you're not a clinical solution. So I'm just wondering strategically, like, how do we move forward as an organization in that space? I think this is obviously part of it, but yeah, those are my questions.
Thanks. And as a caveat, all these participants, to your first question, all these participants were Boston based. So we could have potentially had a bit of bias in that. Had we sampled folks in other cities or states, we might have heard different things. Boston is better resourced in terms of like Phoenix, because there's a hub. So I probably should include that should have included that in the talk, because that's just important to note. Like somebody in a less service state might have like different feedback. But I think in terms of the Phoenix doing what it does, from my opinion, I'd be interested to hear what Jackie has to say about this. But I think keep doing what you're doing. But we need alternative solutions and different options and recovery pathways that people can pursue, because recovery isn't a one size fits all kind of thing. And I think the Phoenix doing what it does, even though perhaps it's gonna maybe take time to scale and grow, I think staying true to the primary purpose, I think is going to be of great value in the end. I really do think it would be to the Phoenix's detriment to try and, overextend or do too much. I think that's part of the reason AA's hung around for so long. They have a set of traditions, and, this is what we do. We don't do the other, we don't get involved in other stuff. And I sort of see the Phoenix does that too. And that's just my opinion. Others may differ, but I think staying the course, trusting you have something valuable here, it'll be rewarded in the long run.
Yeah, I'll just add to that too. I think you're spot on. It's like our greatest strengths are our greatest weaknesses to some extent, right? But it also is what differentiates us in the marketplace, knowing that no one can do it all. And it's research that you're doing, David, I think that's helping to build the proof. And as that evolves, that too will, I think, position us as not a competitor in the marketplace, but a collaborator, an asset, a value add, rather than that thing that's kind of off to the side.
And that's it. Like without the evidence base, it's very hard to be recognized as a legitimate pathway. And one of this work really started because we were approached by somebody at NIDA who came to us and said, you know, the Phoenix program, we're hearing a lot about it. It's growing rapidly. A lot of people seem to be using it. It seems to be helping people, but there's like no data. Like, you know, we don't have the information we need to, you know, write treatment guidelines. We don't know what to tell providers, like should they be recommending this or not? We don't know, you know, like, and NIDA is a source of information for the community. And they said, like, can you put together something? You know, we need this program studied so that we can make guidelines. And so I think that's what this work and subsequent studies will ultimately do. And then it's obviously a lot easier to advocate for an intervention when you've got data to back up your assertions. Yeah. Chris.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, David, and research team for putting this together. I love hearing about this stuff. Just the underpinnings, I mean, of anything. To kind of like bring it a little personal for me, I was really intrigued when you started talking about the different mutual helps and like different mutual help modalities. And, you know, I personally kind of have a three-prong pillars of my recovery. It's Phoenix, AA, and therapy. And I'm really always interested, you know, I think sometimes it's easy for us to talk about the differences, but I'm also like really interested in like practicing mutual help programs together. Because I do also very strongly like these topics keep coming up, and like I think it's great when a program has its specific purpose. Because in a lot of times in nonprofit world, if you try to do everything, you don't end up doing anything well.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious about that kind of, it was also related to a question Eugene had earlier, just about like how Phoenix operates with other modalities, other mutual help societies, and if that is something that can be drawn or can be looked at in the future as well.
Yeah, I think it's an important question, and what we heard in the focus meetings was that a lot of folks were combining programs and were really benefiting, and that really is consistent with the data on this topic. Like, you know, as long as programs aren't contraindicated with one another, and you know, there's not mixed messaging, generally stacking treatments is like beneficial. Substance use disorder is a hard disorder to recover from. Like I'm, you know, a lot of people here, I'm sure in recovery, I remember it's hard. It's really hard. And like, I always say to my, throw everything you got at it, you know, like if, you know, AA works, great. Let's do that. Let's do therapy, you know, you know, let's go to the Phoenix, you know? So, you know, there's really no downside to stacking, you know, or to participating in multiple modalities of recovery. And my sense is that Phoenix is very inclusive in that way. And I'm curious to hear what Jackie has to say about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think people are multidimensional, and so there is this need for a holistic approach. And we've always recognized that we do what we do well, but we do not do it all. And frankly, that's what led us one of the real reasons that we launched Newform, and this idea that if we can put people and community at the center and create an ecosystem of care around them, where you come in one door and you can find what you need, when you need it, how you need it, because what you need today isn't necessarily what you need tomorrow.
Right.
And also recognizing in that kind of multidimensional, holistic way that, you know, we have kind of biological needs, psychological needs, social needs, spiritual needs, financial needs, and that those domains are all critical for us to thrive in life. But again, you know, you can't pay attention to it all at once. Like we can do sometimes one, maybe two, maybe three things, but you can't do it all at once. But having it all there allows you to then kind of pick and choose what matters to you. And I do think that connection has been so disregarded as a modality for change and transformation. We know it as therapists, priests know it, you know, like there are people who know it and it's clear that it works. But it has been sort of deprioritized. And I think that the Phoenix provides that unique platform where people can connect and build the community and those relationships where healing can happen in the everyday. And so it really is that idea of the holistic picture and knowing we can't do it all.
Awesome. You guys are amazing. Our audience, our presenters, our question and answer person. We are 13 minutes over I love this discussion that's happening. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.